So in a just apples to apples comparison, when it comes to inverter topology, with SolarEdge, you're getting about 10% more power because EV chargers are very easy to upsell in a solar solution. And why that is because
and also need to understand what are their needs today, what do they need the solar system to do for them today, but where might they go in the future? Everything is moving to one ecosystem. You know, choose your ecosystem or choose your platform. Today I titled it, you know, the SolarEdge platform. But it's like once you're in that ecosystem or that platform, then that platform is providing for a number of your different energy related needs, whether it's solar, batteries, EV charger, load control, monitoring. I mean, you name it. It's kind of like an operating system for your home's energy system, and then you just plug in the various accessories that you need. So. Yeah. So, you know, on that note, let's go ahead and dive into SolarEdge. So the SolarEdge platform, this is a platform. I mean, I believe you guys are the number one market leading in terms of market share for U.S. residential inverter system. And it's a system that I've installed hundreds of times in the past when I was back in the installation business. I think Dan even has a SolarEdge system at his house. But it's a lot more today than what it was, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago. Is that right? Can you kind of show us how did we go from where we were 5, 6 years ago to where we are with the SolarEdge platform today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that one of the things that we want to really make sure that salespeople know is that SolarEdge is the number one inverter company globally. So we're really big. We're in 133 countries, known for our optimizers and our inverters and our innovation. So as you mentioned, you know, we started with optimizers, inverters, and now we have moved into a lot of other segments, EV charging, batteries, load management devices, all on one platform. We also are in large scale utility, virtual power plants. All of those types of things are part of our portfolio as well. But I think if you remember anything today as a sales rep, just know that SolarEdge is an optimized inverter solution. So when we talk about the different inverter topologies, string inverters, microinverters, and optimized inverter solution, we kind of get the best of both technologies. You know, just like Joe said, we're all moving towards a platform. It's really about what platform you select. And when you're talking about SolarEdge, we're a DC coupled solution. So I would love to dig into that and get a little bit more nerdy on that side of things as we go. But just know that in every situation with SolarEdge, you're going to have an inverter on the wall and optimizers on the roof. And we do that architecture on purpose because we want to harvest more energy from the roof as much as possible and convert it at one central location. And then we have optimizers on the roof that are allowing each module to work independently. They're tracking each module on a per module basis, but we're not converting up there. So it's allowing us to lose less energy on the roof, is really what happens up on the roof with those optimizers. They're called module level power electronics. They allow each module to work independently. So I just wanted to show one more piece when it comes to that topology. It's important, at least to me as a salesperson. I've been in solar for 13 years, started on the sales side. Knowing what you sell is really important. And so this is just another view of string inverter, microinverter, and optimized solution, what's actually happening on the roof. So if you have a string inverter, you know, one module is down, the rest of those modules are going to be working at the lowest performing module. So in a shading solution, string inverters is a challenge. Good news with microinverters, it allows each module to work independently. But because you're converting up there, you're actually losing energy every time you convert. It's called clipping, and you clip at a module level. And then the DC optimized with SolarEdge, remember, we're not converting up there. So if there's one module shaded, that's really the only module that's impacted. But our optimizers can also shift voltage. Because they're on that string, they have that flexibility to shift the voltage and make up for underperformance. So if you look at that module in the middle that's shaded, those neighboring optimizers can say, hey, we need to work overtime because that guy is not performing at optimal levels. So let's work overtime, and they will actually make up for some of that underperformance. So in a just apples to apples comparison, when it comes to inverter topology, with SolarEdge, you're getting about 10% more power from added production just by having a more efficient solution in terms of the topology that you're working with. But Joe, your question really was ecosystem and platform. And so I did want to show the solar.
It's okay, Michelle, because for those that don't know the history on all this, you're right. Let's start there, because when SolarEdge came on the scene, and I can remember back in 2014, you guys kind of came on the scene and just took over immediately. It became sort of like the #1 platform, and we adopted it as our standard like the very next year. But that was the main innovation, was that in the past, if you wanted shade mitigation or module level tracking, you had to use microinverters. Microinverters were more expensive, more time to install, a little bit more complex. You touched on the clipping issue as well. But then, you know, you all came to the scene with a solution that, as an installer, and I was an installer at the time, my impression was, hey, I can install this as fast as the old string inverters, or pretty close to as fast as the old string inverters, but still get the performance benefit of the microinverters, i.e. you know, you don't have to deal with the problem of the string is only as strong as its weakest link. So that's what SolarEdge, I think, was initially known for, the optimized inverter solution. But now what has it grown to?
Yeah, so it has grown to a fully flexible ecosystem of products. We call it SolarEdge Home. So all of our products within this ecosystem all are called SolarEdge Home Battery, SolarEdge Home EV Charger. And these are the two prominent ones right now that we have available and ready to sell. So the battery is a 10 kilowatt hour battery. You can stack up to 3 per inverter, 9 per household, 9 per backup interface. And so that gives us the flexibility to, you know, have a smaller solution, an essential loads backup, or a full home backup solution. That EV charger, and we talked a little bit before we started on how to sell EV chargers and batteries. And I kind of think of the EV charger as the gateway to upselling, because EV chargers are very easy to upsell in a solar solution. And why that is because EV chargers, it really is the best time to install an EV charger when you're already getting solar, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you can size the solar system to account for the EV charging. You usually need about 2 to 3 kW more to charge your car. So you can have that into the conversation when you're talking about EV charger plus solar. But also, if that homeowner is installing that EV charger alongside solar, you can wrap that into the ITC as the entire project. So that EV charger really becomes a very inexpensive add-on for homeowners, but a huge differentiator for salespeople in the house when they're coming up against competitive selling. So one of the big advantages on that EV charger as well is it's wired into the inverter. One of the things that I have noticed that sales reps don't really realize when they're selling EV chargers a lot of the time is you have to wire those typically into a main service panel, or you're getting a 240 volt outlet that you're plugging into. And that causes additional electrical work that is additional cost for homeowners. In this case, you're actually wiring this EV charger directly into the inverter. So this is allowing to save breaker space. You're sharing breaker space with that solar backfeed, and it's allowing you to not, you know, have that additional electrical work.
Yeah, and that can be a big thing, especially in places like California, where you've got working with smaller electrical panels and just smaller physical space to be mounting all these different boxes and switches on the walls. That can be a big thing. Also, for those of you solar surge sales professionals, the more that you can explain this to a homeowner, how these different components actually connect in and integrate in with the home's electrical system, it's just going to impress upon the homeowner that you really understand what you're talking about. It's going to set you apart. In their mind, it's going to set you apart from the competition of folks that are just selling or just giving them quotes. You're actually explaining to them how this is going to work for them, educating them how it's going to work. And that's going to put you in a very strong position when it's time to close the deal.
Yeah, I kind of call it becoming a smart energy expert instead of a solar only sales consultant. You know, I think that salespeople already ask questions that coincide with a lot of these things. So when you're going in and you're doing the needs analysis, a lot of times you're asking, is your energy appetite going to change, right? Is your electricity going to go up? A lot of times somebody will say, well, I'm going to get an EV, right? And in that case, we always, maybe we're putting more solar on that house, but now, because you're a smart energy expert, you can also think, okay, maybe I'll bring up the EV charger. You know, when you're talking to homeowners in needs analysis, normally, even in solar, a lot of times they bring up backup solutions. You know, oh, well, I'm going to have power in an outage, right? If I go solar. How many of us, and I hope that this group is thinking about this, how many of us has had to explain to a homeowner, well, if you go solar, you don't get backup power in an outage unless you have a battery, right? A lot of people have a misconception that you are going to have power in an outage if you go solar. So my challenge is, why don't we just sell them that solution? Because that's the misconception they had in the beginning. We do have that offer. We have it with a battery solution. So you have the ability to think long-term for this homeowner. What's their energy needs going to be long-term? And how are you going to be able to, as a smart energy expert, come to that solution instead of just talking about solar? Because really the conversation isn't savings anymore. I mean, are you seeing that, Joe? It's like every state, especially now California, it's not really about savings as much as it's about control, independence, and being able to manage your energy.
I would agree with you 100% on that. And I'm glad that you touched on needs analysis, because this is something that we preach all the time here. And by the way, folks, if you haven't already got it, go ahead and grab the free download, the 3-step virtual sales process. Because step 1 is all about needs analysis and how to properly interview your prospect first before you try to pitch or sell anything. You have to understand where they're coming from, what their needs are, what their pain points are. And also need to understand, what are their needs today? What do they need the solar system to do for them today? But where might they go in the future? Because maybe they don't have an electric vehicle today, but they certainly plan on replacing, you know, their vehicle with an electric vehicle when their current one fails. And so they want to make sure that maybe bi-directional EV charging or other capabilities like that are being thought about now. So again, that they're choosing the right platform that's going to allow them to expand when and where they need to. So I think that's 100%. The other thing that we talk about in the interview process is just asking them what their goals are. Is it mainly for electric bill savings, which we can still get great savings in certain markets that have NEM1 or NEM2. But for a lot of people, it's more emergency backup. And that's why we have a whole separate line of questioning for customers whose primary concern is emergency backup and energy independence. Because it's you're right, Michelle, it's not about the numbers on the spreadsheet. It's about getting them to this end state that they already have in their mind of them being energy independent. It has nothing to do with the savings. It has to do with self-actualization. And if you can be the person to help get them there, then you know you have a good chance of winning the sale.
All right. I hope you're getting some great value from today's video content. If you're a solar sales professional out there, or maybe you're considering starting a career in solar sales, coming in from another industry, then I'd like to invite you to SolarSurge University. SolarSurge University is the premier online training program for aspiring solar sales professionals who really want to be professionals. Learn how to sell solar at an expert level with a consultative approach. It's the same approach that I use and that we use here at SolarSurge to do over $700,000 a month in solar sales virtually with no advertising budget. So if you'd like to separate yourself from the pack of undereducated, underperforming solar salespeople, check out SolarSurge University, where you can learn all of our expert techniques and for a limited time have access to my live sales call recordings with some of my live clients. So again, we invite you to check out SolarSurge University. The link will be below here, and we're also offering a 14-day no-risk money-back guarantee.
So
Michelle, for those,
yeah.
sorry to cut you off here, but for those
please.
that aren't as familiar with this topic, I know DC coupling and the advantages of the DC coupled architecture are something that that, of course, you and your team do an excellent job of articulating. But maybe for those that aren't as familiar with the issue, can you explain what are the benefits of a DC coupled solar system, i.e. your architecture as opposed to a microinverter architecture, when it comes to things like EV charging or battery storage?
Yeah. So I want to show a couple of visuals. I'm a visual person when it comes to this topic. So I like to say we want to keep it in DC because, as we know, solar is DC power, right? But we need AC for the home to actually power our appliances and things. But here's the good news. Batteries are also DC. And now this EV charger that we're talking about can also be DC. The car battery is DC. So we want to keep things in DC for as long as possible because it allows us to use that energy before we convert it. So if you look here on this this graphic, SolarEdge has all of our products on the DC side. Remember, we have one inverter that's on the wall that allows us to convert everything at one central location. So we have the solar and we have the battery on the DC side, and then we use that inverter to filter, essentially process the energy into AC that we can use. Only one time. So we have one conversion of energy in our solution. When you're talking about an AC coupled solution, which is, there are a lot of AC coupled solutions on the market right now, and microinverters being the biggest one, you actually have to convert the energy 3 different times before it's used in the house because, of course, solar is DC. We're converting it on the roof once through microinverters. Then it's being reconverted to DC so that we can charge the battery. And then it's being reconverted into AC so it can be used in the house. So this is including about 6 extra inverters inside of the battery. So what SolarEdge likes to do is have one brain of the system, one inverter. In a microinverter solution, you have, 30 to 40 inverters because you have them all on the roof, you have them in the battery. And those are all really critical points. Those are all brains of the system that you have to make sure are working properly. We want to have one brain and one point of conversion. And when it comes to converting 3 different times, you're actually losing energy every single time you convert in an AC coupled solution. And so we call it the triple conversion penalty because we like to be dramatic, but it really equates to about 10% more power. Just same size system, same size battery, about 10% more power because we only convert one time. I want to show just one more thing that shows this benefit. And this is helpful in understanding the wiring here. So when you have a DC coupled solution, you're wiring the solar, the battery, and the EV charger into the inverter. So we're sharing a breaker with that inverter, and that's what's going into the main service panel. When you have an AC coupled solution, each of these things take up separate space. And so they're somewhat working independently from one another. And so they are wired separately, taking up more space. A lot of times this is when you see more main panel upgrades. And so this is really the advantage of a DC coupled solution. It allows us to wire really everything into that inverter and keep things on the DC side. One last point here. If solar and the battery are on the DC side, what does that mean? It means we can actually charge the battery directly with DC power as well. So if there is any energy that would normally be clipped or lost from the roof, we can actually charge the battery with it. So we are losing even less energy than we normally would in a clipping situation at all, if there were any clipping within our solution, because we're sending that to the battery and charging it with that. So those are really the advantages of a DC couple solution. I've heard you say this quite a bit before too, about the importance of an ecosystem. And I like how you say, you pick one and you end up kind of being set with that one ecosystem solution. I agree. That's why we have all of these pieces that we want to make available to homeowners. But I didn't mention the smart energy management devices, the load controllers, the relays. Those are really live right now. They're on the price lists. They're available. Those relays and switches allow homeowners to manage those heavier loads automatically through an app. So through My SolarEdge, but also for a installer, it allows you to install a relay on those heavy loads. And in an outage scenario, it will just turn those things off automatically. Instead of having to do like a critical loads panel, that type of thing, you'll instead just do these relays on the heavy loads, shut those off, and then give the homeowner the flexibility to turn on the lighter loads during an outage. They have the ability to turn them on and off on their app as well. So if they did want to turn them on, they could. But this is just another piece within this ecosystem. And, you know, as we're talking about the importance of an ecosystem, I think that NEM3 is a great example, because in that market, you have to have a whole solution that communicates with each other on a dime. You know, like every component has to talk to each other to make it advantageous for your homeowner to actually yield the best return on investment, take advantage of the high export rates, those types of things. And so every single piece component within our solution, the inverter, the battery, the EV charger, they all work on a mesh network, and they talk to each other to say, hey, it's advantageous for this homeowner right now to export the battery as opposed to use it directly into the house. We're going to throw that battery completely into the grid so that they make the most money, or we're going to send it to the home so that they can consume it. So we're making those decisions on the back end. If your homeowner has a profile like NEM3, PG&E, we know exactly what that export rate schedule is, and we can export at times that are advantageous for the homeowner. That homeowner can also schedule EV charging at times that are advantageous for them. And so there is a real important reason why sticking with an ecosystem is going to be even more essential getting into these markets that are going towards a NEM3 type environment. So speaking of profiles, somebody else brought up profiles a bit ago. I just did want to show that we have multiple profiles. That one that I mentioned, that NEM3, where we can discharge the battery, we can send it back to the grid, we can export at advantageous times, and then we could also maximize self-consumption whenever possible. And then, of course, we have backup only profile that allows homeowners just to keep their battery stored until there's an emergency situation.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is, like you said, Michelle, once you program the rate schedule into the software then can do all the buying and selling for the homeowner, right? To maximize profitability.
Yes, exactly.
But as we are winding down on time here, Michelle, is there any other pieces that you'd like to talk about your ecosystem? We talked about optimization. We talked about DC coupling, kind of the advantages there. We talked about bi-directional EV charging. We talked about battery storage. And different battery profiles, I think, is where you left off. What else is there on the platform?
Yeah, and I can't stress enough the importance of a full ecosystem, and I will show it one more time on. I have another slide on this My SolarEdge app. So this is what your homeowners will see when they can manage their entire ecosystem. So one of the big questions I get from sales teams is, why shouldn't I just pair a different battery with the SolarEdge system? Because of course you can, if you wanted to pair a different battery with a SolarEdge system, you could, but the challenge is they then won't talk to each other, right? They then are not going to communicate in an intelligent way to make intelligent decisions for your homeowners. And so that ecosystem is so important in order to really maximize the value for the homeowner, not to mention it's all going to be on the same app. So they have the ability to watch how much their solar is producing and where that energy is going. Are they sending it to the house, the grid, the battery, the car? They're going to see that in real time. There's a couple of things in terms of safety on that My SolarEdge app too for batteries that's really important. So in a blackout situation, the homeowner is going to get a pop-up that tells them they're backed up and will give them how much time approximately they have left on that battery so that they can conserve if they need to. And then we have something called Weather Guard. So it takes all of the weather satellites in the area and will predict severe weather coming and will charge the battery to full capacity before that storm gets there. This is also for things like high winds. So what's interesting is just yesterday I had an outage at my house because it was a high wind warning. That's always what starts wildfires here. And so that Weather Guard solution will pick up a high wind warning as well and will charge the battery for an outage scenario for your house also. So those are safety features that have been really important when it comes to backup scenarios for your homeowner. Just another reason why an ecosystem, is essential in this type of utility environment, because grid stability is even less common than it ever has been. And utility policy is requiring us to make these different decisions at different times of day. And each homeowner has a unique profile dependent on where their utility is.